This would literally end all pollution on Earth, but it would also end poverty on the planet within about 20 years. This is a big announcement. I hope this goes viral because that's what we need. Their plan is to create a threat from outer space, to try to unite the world like Independence Day, the movie, in a sort of a military global junta of humans against aliens back in the 70s. So they could hit a button basically and stage an alien attack on the planet.
What do you think about Elon Musk and what role? Is he like a Nikola Tesla? Is he a good guy in your eyes?
If he was inclined to research this end of it, he wouldn't be making I call it a fake Tesla. I mean, a real Tesla car wouldn't have to be plugged in. That existed in 1920s. Nikola Tesla had one. These folks, the world is the oyster, they operate as they want.
Who nominates them?
Nobody. It's so sensitive. We're not going to let the president control this anymore, or the Congress. The big corporate media, left, right, center, all of it is corrupt.
You're convinced all of it is corrupt?
Absolutely corrupt. And the proof of it is,
so a couple months ago, I watched this documentary called The Lost Century. Blown away by it. First time I heard about Invention Secrecy Act of 1951. I told my wife, baby, you got to watch it. Then I told my son, you got to watch it. I told everybody, you got to watch this documentary. 6,000 patents that were protected by this senator called John Sparkman. It went into effect in 1952. Somehow, some way, that year, they chose to nominate him on the Democratic Party as the vice president. November 1st, we test the biggest nuclear test at the time that was 700 times more powerful than the one we dropped in Hiroshima. November 5th was election. And then Stephen Greer, I said, hey, man, I know we did a podcast 4 years ago. We got to do another one because I got a whole different thing I want to talk to you about. He came on. We had a 2.5-hour conversation together. He told me about the fact that the government has access to technology to teleport. You know, teleportation we hear about in movies and sci-fi and all this stuff. Says, nah, they've had access to it for a while. Told a time about an encounter that George H.W. Bush Sr. had with President Bill Clinton, telling him what to stop talking about and not even look into. A private conversation he had with Barry Goldwater. Lots of weird things. Colleagues that were killed for having information. And then today, he releases this project he's been working on for many, many years where you'll have access to all these information from the Invention Secrecy Act of 1951. Anyways, I don't want to take anything away from this. You will be fascinated by this conversation, especially if you are a capitalist, if you have a family, and you want to find a way to preserve this great, world we're living in, right, Earth, and you want it to be around, and you want to find out who are the power players that are controlling all the good things that could potentially happen to you and I for the future, you're going to want to watch this thing in its entirety. So the last time we were together, you and I, was May of 2020, which is a little over 4 years ago, 4 years and a month.
Yep.
And it was a fascinating conversation. Millions of people watched it. It was great. We talked about aliens. We talked about your encounters with aliens, experiences, what you've done. Obviously a doctor, scientist, the things you've worked on. I even think your dad, was he working on the certain responsibilities with the atomic for the government? What was your dad's?
No, it was my uncle helped design the lunar module.
The lunar, that's right, your uncle.
On the moon the first time with Neil Armstrong.
So this is in your genes. You've been interested in this for a while. And then recently, I was late to this. 2 months ago, I watched The Lost Century, right, and How to Reclaim It. A documentary they did that I think came out in 2023, if I'm not mistaken. Correct. Right? It came out last year. I watched it, and then I was blown away by the Invention Secrecy Act, and I went down a rabbit hole, and I wanted to find out who wrote this bill and what happened to the guy that wrote the bill. The guy that wrote the bill, you know who he is, the John Sparkman, I think his name is, or something like that. He ends up becoming the nominee for the Democratic vice presidential candidate of 1952, exactly the year they wrote the bill, and they're holding on to 6,000 patents. And then I had my wife watch it. Then I had my son watch it. He's here right now. He just met you a few minutes ago. And I think the world needs to know about this.
Right.
And that's when I said, I think we need to do part 2. And I'm glad you said yes.
Happy to be here.
Yeah. So
you do a great show.
So let's start off with that. I mean, I got a lot of things I want to go through with you, but I want to start off with that. To the average person, when I ask them, have you heard of the Invention Secrecy Act? When I tell you 99% say, I've never heard of it. I'm being friendly. Right. Because 100% people are like, what is the Invention Secrecy Act of 1951? Can you tell the audience what is the Invention Secrecy Act of 1951, who was behind it, and why?
Well, it actually became an offshoot of the projects from the 40s dealing with energy and technology and propulsion systems that, if they were disclosed, would be the immediate replacement of oil, gas, coal, surface transportation, public utilities. Well, in today's dollars, you're talking probably over $1,000 trillion. So what most people don't realize is that around between 1945 and 1954 was the heyday of electromagnetic engineering dealing with energy and propulsion. And it was from two sources. Research that had been done in the late 1800s and early 20th century, and even things that people call anti-gravity, not the correct scientific term, but let's just go with that. It's really gravity control. Those experiments started in the late 20s with T. Townsend Brown and the Kolosky-Frost experiment in Germany, and where very high voltage systems would cause objects to lift and basically have mass cancellation and look like they're defying gravity and levitate.
This is the G engines you're talking about.
Yep. And but that was earlier. I mean, that was later. This was 20s. But those began to be more and more classified. So T. Townsend Brown's work became some of the core founding for what's called the RAND Corporation in Ventura, California. But those got populated with research from retrieving extraterrestrial vehicles in the mid-40s and 50s, where they began to study them under a very highly classified project. I have the documents. We've just released all of them to the public last month in our Disclosure Project Intelligence Archive. But it describes, in one of the Canadian top-secret documents, that a top-secret team was working on this in 1950, and the work they were doing surpassed the secrecy of the development of the hydrogen bomb, the ultimate doomsday weapon, you can imagine. Now, this is an authenticated, top-secret document. So the punchline on that is there was this technological breakthroughs, both human and in studying objects from outer space, let's say, that came together, the two mighty rivers that became this torrent, but very classified. So they realized that there were too many people stumbling across this, and they created this act to give the government the power that even if you don't apply for a patent, if they learn you have something that they want to seize, all they have to do is issue a national security order on it, and they take it. And this is not a conspiracy theory and all that. It's just a fact. You can look up people can look this up. And I've worked over the years with many, many people who've had that happen to them, geniuses that have had their work confiscated. And it would be an enormous benefit to humanity.